Hey there, welcome to my channel. My name is Linda. I've got a lot of fun DIY home decor craft projects for you today. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Today we'll be working on DIY Rustic Farmhouse Fall Home Decor. So let's get started with project number 1. Now for this project, we're going to be working with this fabric in this large circle. This fabric I got in a roll at Walmart. It's called Sherpa Fleece, 1.5 yards, around $10. And then I taped a bunch of cardstock together and then, drew this gigantic 26-inch circle. And of course, cut that out. First thing I'm going to do is fold this big circle in half. And as you can see, I'm on the floor. That's how big this circle is. I'm going to fold that Sherpa fabric in half and then place the fold of the circle onto the fold of the fabric. I'll go ahead and use a couple of pins and pin that down. You should be able to get at least 2 pumpkins out of this big circle. This is the biggest pumpkin I've ever made, and I love it. I got the idea off of some shopping site, Kohl's or Target or something, and they were selling pumpkin-shaped pillows, and I'm like, that's gigantic. I've got to make one. So here's my gigantic pumpkin-shaped pillow. And now what I did is I folded this in half and fold it in half again once it was cut out, because right at that point I need to find the center of my circle. I'm going to be using this crochet thread. You can find it at Walmart. And however thick you want it. Mine's pretty thick. I think about it like a size 3, maybe a size 5. And I'm going to cut 7 strands of this because we want to use this to make segments on our pumpkin. And they are about probably 36-inch long strands. Probably overkill. I know it is. It's way too long, but I'd rather have too long than not long enough, of course. So again, cutting 7 of these because I like odd numbers in my pumpkin segments. I'm going to use this large doll needle. You can get these in a pack at Walmart. And I'm using one, you want to look for a needle with a big eye opening because we're trying to get that thread through that large eye opening. So I'm finding my center and poking that needle through, and I'm going to take a Sharpie and make just a little black dot right where that needle comes out. Just like that, nice and easy. And I like the big eye needles, big holes in the needle eye. How am I saying that? Anyway, because I like to, as you can see here, take 2 or 3 strands of the string at one time. And we're just going to poke that through the center where we mark that, and then we're going to pull our needle out. Leave enough hanging out of your pumpkin. Don't pull it all the way through. And then I've put 2 on this one. Now, when you put it through, you don't want to put it in the same hole. Put it right next to it, right close, but not the same hole. Because then when we go to knot all of these together, you don't want that to come out of this large hole that you've been poking through trying to get all your string through. Once we've got all our strings through, pull them together all even at one end and then just tie a big knot in it. I did 2 knots here. Just like that. We don't want this to come out, and then pull that all the way through. Now remember, we're doing this on the inside of the fabric, okay? So now I'm going to take some fishing line. This is just 30-pound test. My husband gave it to me. It doesn't really matter, the size of it or anything. I just like to use fishing line. I'm going to use that same needle. And I'm going to tie a couple of 4, 5, 6 knots because this fishing line is really slick and I don't want it to come out. And I like to use fishing line because I have used different things in the past, but fishing line does not break on me when I go to gather this pumpkin together. So we're going to start slow in case we have a beginner. We're working from the inside of our fabric. I'm going to call it to the outside where the fleece is. So my needle's poked part way through, and I'm just going to poke it from the inside to the outside. Inside to the outside. So we're inside, outside, inside, outside. Again, inside, outside. And we're basically just pleating this fabric back and forth on our needle. I'm about a 1/2 inch from the top, and then I'm about a 1/2 inch apart in your stitches. It doesn't matter if you get them a little closer together sometimes or a little farther apart sometimes. Try to at least stay about the same width from the top, but the other stitches don't essentially matter. And then when you get, 4 or 5 of those pleats onto your needle, you can pull it all the way through. We're going to do it again. So we're inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, just like that. I get 4 or 5 pleats on here. Get one more, and then we're going to pull it all the way through. You're going to continue this process all the way around till you come right close to your last stitch, close to that knot, and then you're going to pull that all the way through and go ahead and pull your needle off that fishing line. And then you're going to grab that long strand and you're going to grab the other strand, your knot, and you're going to pull that knot out so it's nice as long as your other strand you had hanging just a second ago. So you've got two long strands here, and open up your pumpkin. Now we're going to start stuffing it, okay? I'm just using pillow stuffing as you saw there, and I'm going to stuff this nice and tight, which is another reason why I like to use fishing line, because I stuff my pumpkin so tight that when I'm trying to pull on this fishing line to close around all that stuffing, I know it's not going to break. So I'm just kind of stuffing and pulling on the two strands of my fishing line together to kind of gather that opening closed, and then stuffing a little more, you know, kind of gauging how much I want in there. Once I'm satisfied where I like it, I get it all the way pulled through, and then I'm going to tie several, probably 7, 8, 9, 10 knots here, because again, remember, it's really slick fishing line because I don't want it to come out. Remember to leave a hole big enough because you want to put a stem in here. So that's another thing to think about. That's why my hole's kind of big. I cut off the excess and I'm going to just stuff those long pieces kind of right inside there. Now we're going to work with our strings. We're going to make our segments, and I'm just kind of placing where, you know, they might go. And I usually take one string across from the others, you see here, and I'll flip it over. And then I will take both of those, I'll pull them up together, pull it really taut, and then tie it in a knot. Now when you're tying these strings together, try to tie them in a fashion that you kind of leave the center open between the knots of all the strings, because you got to be able to get your stem in there in the midst of all those strings. So I've got my other one pulled up here, one across from the other. I usually will kind of wrap it underneath the knot I just made, kind of tie a knot around it. Remember, pulling it taut to make your sections. And then here I come with another two, pulling it up and over. Move my strings out of the way, and I'll kind of tie a little knot. See, now I'm kind of tying in the other end. I'm trying to leave that center open a little bit. See, I didn't tie where the other ones were. Nice knot. And then I've got one string left. I'm just going to pull that up and over, and you can move these strings once you get them tied. You can move them and fix your segments. And I'm going to bring it up and grab a string from one of the other ones, and I'm going to tie that together. A little knot here. And then I'm going to take my excess strings. So I've got a couple of large big holes there. I can shove my stem in, cut those strings off, and then tuck them inside. I don't cut them close to the string because I don't want them to come out. I leave nice long segments. So I've got a scrap piece here about 8 by about 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 inches scrap piece of our fleece, and I'm just going to roll it up for our stem. This is what I'm going to use for our stem. Just like that, nice and easy. Now I've got a piece of heavy duty wire here. I've kind of bent it in half a little bit. I'm going to roll that up inside our stem about 1 inch from the top. And then I'm going to add some Beacon Fabri-Tac glue. Here's what I'm going to be using, and I'm going to glue our fabric together. I put that wire in there so that I can kind of bend and shape my stem. Okay, but about 1 inch down from the top, because when we go to stuff this in, that wire is going to push up, and we're going to have to push it back down anyway. I don't worry about gluing the wire in or anything like that. I'm going to cut off the excess pieces here. And here's some of the things I'm going to use. Some pumpkins and these little fluffy balls from Dollar Tree, woodwards from Dollar Tree, some wood leaves from Dollar Tree, and some crochet trim, also again from Dollar Tree. Some pom-pom trim I got at Walmart. And these I got, I'm going to use wood leaf from Joann's, a pick, and some just of this crochet trim, $1.99, 6 yards of it, and then you get it half off from Hobby Lobby. Got it for $1. And then some of this trim I got at Christmas time from Walmart. And then some of this yarn. Also, I picked this up at Walmart. It's called Serenity Chunky Yarn. I kind of want this pumpkin tone on tone, as you can guess. And I'm going to also use some wood beads here. I kind of want to do creams and whites. And then these are just some kind of bead pitberry thing I got at Goodwill, a big old stem of it, you know, just for my supply. So I've got this. It's ready to go. I'm bending it. I'm going to add some glue all the way around the end part of it, you know, last couple inches or so. Grab a bunch of Fabri-Tac glue. Of course, you can use hot glue for this part. Once I get enough glue, I'm going to shove it in there. I'm going to pull that string apart, shove it right in the center. Perfect. You'll see that wire try and pop up here in a minute, probably. And then there it is. I'll shove it back down, and then I'm going to bring up my gathered part of the pumpkin, and I've got enough glue on there and kind of shove it up against the stem so there's not a gap, there's not an opening. This is what it looks like. Now this right here, all of this really is, you know, however you want to decorate it, but I wanted to take some of this yarn just to add a little bit texture to the stem. So I'm just wrapping it around the stem of the pumpkin, you know, probably about a 3-inch width, you know, piece. You don't have to do this. I just thought it would be fun, give it a little personality. I like how the yarn's kind of twisted and chunky. It's soft like the fleece. And then I'll kind of double wrap a little bit, come down to the bottom and make a bow with nice big loops. Let that hang for a minute. Okay, and I'm going to ravel the ends a little bit, give it a little more texture. All right, now I'm going to come in here, add some more decoration, that pom-pom trim. I'm going to add some of this in. Right underneath that bow. I'll go ahead and like tie it in a knot. I'm going to take this crochet trim and tie it in the knot in the center just to give us some gluing surface, kind of laying things here, see how I want it. Cut off, you know, the length I want. I'm going to let these hang nice and long on the end. And then I'm going to come in with this kind of cream wired trim and, you know, see how big I want my bow and my bow loops here, just tying a simple bow here. Perfect. Again, I'm going to make these nice and long to let them hang. And then we're going to start gluing. Going to glue our little, right where we made the knot in the pom-pom, so it gives us gluing surface right underneath that first yarn bow. Going to glue in our crochet trim right at the knot we made. Trim these just a little bit more. I love how this turned out. I love kind of the tone on tone of the creams and whites together. Looks just so elegant to me, natural, fun. And then the pop of color came from the beaded pip berries. We're going to put our bow on right again underneath that yarn, because then I'm going to bring that yarn kind of right over the top of that bow, and I'll glue that into place. Perfect. Just think it looks elegant. We're going to tie our little string in here. You could use that macrame string from Dollar Tree if you want. And then we're going to start, the leaf's just laying there. I haven't glued it in yet. I'm going to start gluing in the little fabric pumpkins from that Dollar Tree pick. Little velour pumpkins. I just love the white ones. Going to glue them at a little bit of an angle, and then we'll go ahead and glue that wood leaf in. Again, this just came from a pick from Joann's. You could use anything there, any wood leaf. If you even want a wood leaf, I don't know. It's your personality and style. And then I'm going to take this Give Thanks, you know, from that pack of words from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to glue it onto that Dollar Tree leaf, covering that hole. Perfect. And then I've got just a little mini clothespin here, and I'm going to glue that right onto that little ensemble. I'm going to go ahead and add some of those wood beads. Add a couple different, I had that little sectioned wood bead too. I think I picked those up at Hobby Lobby. I like those kind of little sectioned looking wood beads. 3 beads per strand, and I'll make one shorter than the other. Tie a knot, cut off the excess so the beads don't fall out, and kind of smush the end a little bit, just like that. Perfect. This one will be a little bit longer hanging. Cut off the excess after you tie the knot. Smush the end. I just like to say smush. And then we're going to add a little glue to our clothespin, and we're going to add that right in between those pumpkins. I'll take one of those little fluffy ball things from Dollar Tree, glue that in a little bit behind. So it's just poking out a little bit, just poking out right behind that leaf. And then I'm going to add in our little pop of color. We're going to go ahead and glue that in right at the base of that stem. Love that pop of color. And that makes this project complete. Let's move on to project number 2. For this project, I've got 2x4 wood here, and I cut it into 4 equal pieces, and these measure just about 7 inches tall. Now, I do have like 2 more sets, and I did a 6-inch and a 5-inch tall, but we're just going to work with the larger set for now. I'm just taking some wood glue here because I'm going to glue these together on the, widest side, just like that. I thought these would make cute pumpkins, of course, and give us a lot of fun texture to work with. I like how this one turned out. It's nice and rustic where the other one just looked elegant. This is kind of, my rustic side of it. This together, making sure, our top and bottom are all nice and even. And then once I get that into place with the wood glue, I'll go ahead and clamp it for a little bit before I start working on it. I think I let it set for like half an hour or so. And then once those clamps come off camera, I go ahead, I have a little piece of scrap wood here from this chunky slat board from Dollar Tree. I go ahead off camera and glue that on for the stem. I think it's about 3 inches tall. I'm going to use Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color drop cloth for this project, as well as some Waverly wax mixed with water, antique wax, I guess, for the stem. Okay, I don't have to paint it all the way around, because you all know I'm going to use scrapbook paper. So I'm just making sure I get around, each area, make sure I get in those deep grooves, because that part is going to show. I am going to cover each of the sides separately, all right? You don't have to use scrapbook paper. You could, of course, just paint the whole thing. And then once I've got the drop cloth color on the bottom, of course, I taped it off a little bit and just kind of staining that stem. Perfect. Then once that's all dry, I will take it outside off camera and distress it as you see here. Love how that distress look is. I've got everything cut and everything almost ready to go except for a few pieces. So what I've done is use this scrapbook paper, which is my favorite for fall from Hobby Lobby. And I've cut this paper from my supply, and I've cut this into strips, okay? It's going to be stripped front and back, as well as the sides and the bottom, and then the top piece. Now for the top piece, what I did is I made myself a little pattern here. So I traced how big I wanted it from the bottom, and then cut that out, and then measured from the width of the front and the sides of the pumpkin stem, and then of course took my ruler and connected all those lines so it would give me a center little box, and then I cut that little box out, and so that will fit nicely over that stem. Okay, so I've got this done on my one piece of paper here. I'm going to go ahead and cut that center box out. Tiny little scissors get in there to cut this out. Little scissors from Dollar Tree come in handy, I tell you. Perfect. And then that will slide right over the top. And I don't care that there's a little opening here because we'll cover all that up. So as you probably saw on that, there was sewing on it. So those of you who might be new to my channel, I love to take all my papers and I take them to my sewing machine and I sew around the edges of each and every one. I think it just gives it that nice, subtle kind of country farmhouse look to it. You don't have to do that if sewing's not your thing, because I tell you, once you start sewing on your papers, if you try to not sew on your papers somewhere down the line, it does not look right. I'm just telling you right now, so beware if you start sewing on your papers. So I just have a few here left that I haven't done just to show you what I'm doing. Of course, you just sew on it like it's regular fabric, a size 9 or 10 needle. I've got all polyester thread, but cotton thread works great. My tension's set on 4, my stitch length is on 4, and then once that's done, I'm taking those Dollar Tree scissors, open end of the scissor blades, and I'm scraping along the edges of all my paper to give it that rustic look. I love to do that. This, again, is optional, of course, and you can see what it looks like here. Just kind of adds a little dimension to our paper. One little piece left here. And then we're going to start gluing. Again, I'm using Beacon Fabri-Tac glue here, and I'm going to start gluing all my separate pieces. Now, if you didn't want the front to have these separate little, slips of paper here, you could just cover it with one big piece. But, my intention here is I want to see that, break in between the wood, if you know what I'm saying. I want to see those grooves in between the wood. But you could just use one sheet of paper here and just kind of cover all that up. Trying to glue everything, in one swoop here. Trying to skip out adding the glue to everything because, you all know how to do that, right? Nothing boring than watching me glue paper, but I always like to show it so you can see I'm doing it, I guess. I don't know, it's just in my brain. They've got to see me gluing, so there it is. All right, then we're working on the sides of our pumpkin, of course. One big sheet, nice. Getting the other side. The bottom I decided to go with just a piece of cardstock that matched because it was thicker and I wanted something a little more just kind of durable on the bottom. That paper from Hobby Lobby is kind of thin, right? And then we'll put our top piece on. Yes, of course I sewed around that little box. I don't believe, or I can't believe you'd even think I wouldn't. And then we're going to add the paper to our stem. Look at those tiny little strips of paper. Of course I'm covering all that too. I just love it. You don't even have to add paper on the stem. If you're like, okay, I'm going to add paper on the pumpkin, you don't have to do it on the stem. That's just what I like. But I just like to show you how fun it is to use up that scrapbook paper. And I've got a lot of it because I scrapbook for years, although I still do. You guys just don't see a lot of it. Getting our last piece on here. And then these are some things I'll be using. This is from Hobby Lobby, these fall words. I'm going to use the one that's not painted. You, of course, could use these from Dollar Tree. And then I've got a lot of things down here. I don't use all of it, but I do use those sunflowers. I use these that I were at my Dollar Tree last year. Those kind of wooden flowers and stuff. Some more of this, you know, cute beaded and berry pick here like we used in pumpkin. Some of this pick from Joanne. Some of this wire jute cord is like a staple from Dollar Tree. Some of this mesh tubing, again, like a staple from Dollar Tree. Some of this raffia as well from Dollar Tree. And then I've got just some, you know, pieces of acorn off of a pick and some of these burlap leaves from Dollar Tree. The first thing I did is kind of laid my Dollar Tree leaf, burlap leaf over the middle of that pumpkin stem and drew on it to cut that out so it can slide right over the top. And then, yeah, I'm going to sew my leaf. It's barely noticeable, but it's there. Had I maybe used a darker thread or something, you could see it a little bit more. I don't often change my threads. Sometimes I will depending on the paper, but whatever's in there just will stay in there for months until I decide, you know, wait, I need to change that color. Here's what it looks like. Pop it over the top there. I will go ahead and glue that down, but see, it just kind of adds to that country rustic look. Take one of these sunflowers off. I love these with the little burlap on them. And then another, you know, leaf, wood leaf here. Kind of lay this down so you can see a little better. Wood leaf off of a pick from Joann's. I love these, almost out of these, but I love that kind of wood flower in this like leaf. I think it's so pretty and the colors match. I'm going to use some of this from Walmart. You could use the moss from Dollar Tree. This Walmart brand it's a little bit more moisture and it's just not as dried up and you get nice long pieces out of it. So I rather spend just that little bit more money and use that. But I do have the Dollar Tree moss as well. So I'm just seeing how I want the moss to be there. So before I glue that moss on, I took some of that rope wire from Dollar Tree and kind of wrapped it around the stem and gluing that down. That end will get covered up that we're gluing on the leaf. And I always like mine to come up above the leaf and kind of curl off to the side a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and add our moss in around the front and the back. I like to add a little bit onto the back too. I don't want the back to be, you know, naked. I want it to have a little bit of something because most of these things I sell at craft shows and I just like you all know the front and back to be finished off. And if you're new to my channel, I like the front and back to be finished off. Gonna go ahead and glue this leaf in here and glue our little burlap sunflower on. Add another little pumpkin stem here. Anything you've got that you love working with for fall stuff would look great on your pumpkin here. Leaves and flowers and cute tiny little pumpkins. The little foam or styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree would be cute here. Whatever you have and like. And I'm just kind of gluing that flower in around the back. Here's that raffia. I just kind of tied it into a bow here. It was kind of last minute. I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and use it because then I wasn't going to use it and then I was and I went back and forth. But my glue is still wet enough, you know, from the sunflower and stuff. I can go ahead and kind of pick that up and add this raffia right behind it. You have about a minute for your glue to set up here. I'm going to take some of that mesh tubing. I like to tie a knot in it so it's better for gluing. It's a little too long. I'll shorten it here in a minute. Again, I still have some working time here because I'm going to move that flower forward and tuck it behind in there. And then I will cut it down. I think I cut it down even a little bit more off camera. I like to have things poking up and stuff sticking out around my stems of my pumpkins. And then going to add in that cute little acorn that kind of left over from a pick I had. Get this moved so you can see again and just slide it right up underneath there. And then I'm going to add a little pine cone here on the back side just to kind of finish that back side off a little bit. And I've got some really thin twine here. I'm just tying it into a very large looped bow. I'm going to put it to the right side of our sunflower. Add some stuff hanging down. I'm going to take another little clothespin like we did on our first pumpkin. And I'm going to glue it to our happy fall, and then I will glue that into right underneath that sunflower, and that makes this project complete. So I hope you like both projects that I came up with today. Please give this video a thumbs up. It helps my channel to grow a lot. And leave me a comment down below and let me know which project you want to make right now. If you're coming in for the first time, you're checking things out on my channel, you're checking this video out and you're digging what you saw, make sure before you click off you hit that red subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on another project from me, because I got a lot of fun fall coming your way. Before I go, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Don't allow the enemy access into your story, your thoughts, your emotions, or your attitude. When you give him that access, he has control over you. He has a seat at your table. And God has only prepared a table for two. The Lord is your shepherd, your king, your warrior, your fighter, your healer, and he should have the only access you need to change your life. God made you to follow him, and if God is not leading you, then something or someone else is. The enemy prowls around waiting, circling for an end to whatever you might extend his way. And if you think that you know and have decided what's best for yourself, and you're trying to take control of things for yourself, then things aren't going to go right. The Creator of the universe has invited you into his care. He knows what's best for you. He has invited you to sit at his table. So allow that invitation that you received to be opened. RSVP your yes to attend. If you're looking for a rest, if you need a break, God will lead you beside his still waters to give you that rest. Think about it. Think about that invitation that God has invited you to. A table with the King. Right in the middle, whatever you are going through. A table with the Almighty God. Comforting, isn't it? He will allow your cup to overflow with his peace, his grace, his mercy, and his love. Keep your mind set on him. Dwell in his house. Don't allow the enemy an opening to access your invite. Remember, God only prepared a table for two. I thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.